Jerry Bovino. You are not going to want to miss this show. We've got the Gay Jewish Bodyguard.
How you doing, Jerry?
Andrew Gilman. It's so great to have Andrew on the show. You're going to love Andrew. I'm telling you, this guy's a walking contradiction. He does everything you can think of, and he's an environmentalist and a humanitarian. Andrew, it's great to see you. Tell him how we met last night.
Last night we met my friend Julie at the Jerome, and just hit it off.
How'd you meet Julie?
I met Julie at an event at Aspen, in the mountain, right on Ajax.
She's an amazing person. I ought to
Lovely
give a little
woman.
plug to
Lovely
Julie.
woman.
She's a lawyer. She's highly intelligent. She's involved in movie production.
Yeah.
I had a screenplay that she was trying to help me promote with a girl named Sarah in New York, where it's like trying to get some things going here. But I enjoyed meeting you, and you're a very, very charismatic guy.
Thank you.
And you caught my attention. And as soon as I started talking to you, I knew you didn't know it, Andrew, but you were a TV show.
Well, I've been told I'm a character, so.
So, now what's a nice boy like you doing in a place like this, Andrew?
Well, it's the rough, tough streets of Aspen, and that I make a few turns and climb some ice if I'm lucky.
There you go. Well, start off. Go back to your childhood. Where'd you grow up? Where were you born? What's your story?
Well, born at LIJ on Long Island.
Okay, Long Island Jewish Hospital. I worked
Exactly.
there. When
Me
I
too.
was an intern, I worked there for a while.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Nice people. I used to work in the pediatric ED.
Okay.
And it was an interesting experience. Grew up on Long Island, got into climbing eventually in the early 90s, climbing on plastic. Eventually started climbing in the gunks up in New
I
Paltz.
climbed in the gunks. My first climb was Three Pines.
I think
Three Pines is it's like a 5'3" or something.
I think I went straight to a 5'8" on Andy
Yeah.
Pandy. I think it was in the
Right.
on the near traps.
But most people get their start in rock climbing around the metro area in the gunks.
Yeah, well, I started climbing in camp.
Okay, where'd you go to camp?
Went to camp at Lake Owego. It was a pond.
Okay.
Sounds better as a lake. Sounds better as a lake.
But it's a big pond.
Yeah, it's a big pond, big green pond. And from there,
Where'd you go to school?
I went to school in Great Neck and in Port
North or
Washington.
south?
North, until
Great
7th
Neck
grade.
North,
Yeah.
okay. And how would I know that? Because I grew up in Bayside, like I had
Of
no
course.
money. The guys from Great Neck North were like the rich guys.
I think that's where my karate teacher started teaching.
Yeah. And so just to give you a little taste of what we're going to do with Andrew today, Andrew is amazing. Not only is he an experienced climber, a terrific skier, a mountaineer, he's a martial arts expert. He works professionally as a bodyguard, right? I mean, you've got a lot of stuff going on.
There's a lot.
And like the gay bodyguard thing, we're going to get into that because it's sort of like a contrast.
It's very,
in
very
stereotypes.
contradictive.
Right, it is, it is. So anyway, so you grew up in the city. You went to school. Where'd you go to college?
Just go school at SUNY Buffalo.
Okay. Oh, so did I.
Yeah.
That's where I got my medical degree.
That's where I dropped out of.
Oh. Well,
Somebody's got to finish.
Bob Broadus, who was our sheriff here, who's like a famous guy in town, and he was our sheriff here for many years. He's a beloved character in Aspen. Bob Broadus is amazing. He lived in Buffalo.
Oh, God.
At the same time I was in medical school in Buffalo. And he told me he spent so much time hanging out on the streets in Buffalo smoking dope, he could have gone to medical school. And we laugh about that all the time.
Nice.
Yeah. So why didn't you finish college?
It just wasn't, Buffalo wasn't for me. It was a little flat, a little inactive.
It's freezing.
It's very cold, and there's not a lot to do there. There's
Yeah.
not even any mountains. My buddy Rich and I, we drove from Buffalo to St. Mary's Glacier in the winter. Not St. Mary's, sorry. We drove to tallest mountain in New York.
And that's
now
where
I'm
you
forgetting
got
the
your
name, of
start
course.
in climbing.
And we did a winter climb. We were totally unprepared. He didn't bring a sleeping pad, and so we were spooning on my very little summer weight sleeping pad.
There's an interesting
Mount Marcy.
story.
That's what it was.
Oh, Mount Marcy.
At the lean-to by
Yeah.
ADK Lodge, and we got in there. We were soaking wet in sweat, carrying way too much gear, and it was an experience.
Do you do 14ers also?
I've done the majority of 13ers and 14ers in the winter.
Yeah. Wow.
There's
So you're a
just-
really experienced climber.
Yeah, We're going to go off to, my buddy Dan and I, we're looking at Liberty Ridge on Mount Rainier in March.
Liberty Ridge is
very technical route.
I've climbed Rainier 3 times, but by like Disappointment Cleaver.
Right.
And then I've done
the highway.
Right. I've done it by like a traverse of the Emmons Glacier, but Liberty Cap and Liberty Ridge, your chances of success for a guy like me are like an asymptotic curve approaching 0. You know, it's like you really have to know what you're doing.
Well, closer to 0 of success, the more interesting it's going to be.
Yeah, I get that. Climbing is all about the challenge, isn't it?
It is. It's very internal. You can only be so talented and practice your skills and go out and be fit. But to have this emotional component that people say you have to be prepared for, it's more of this very internal, intrinsic journey.
It's totally internal. You know, people say, "Oh, you climb to conquer the mountain."
Oh no, you have to have synergy.
You don't conquer the mountain's been there for 1,000 years before you got there. It'll be there for another 5 million years. You know, you only conquer yourself when you're climbing.
Or you need to have harmony with yourself, and you need to move with the mountain. And you're never going to beat it. You're pretty much there because the earth is letting you, and you need to find a very deep state of humility, of accepting every movement and putting your protection in when you need to, if you need to, depending on the route. And it's like a trip.
Yeah, you know, the metaphor that I like about mountaineering, which is the same as for life, it's not about reaching the summit, it's the journey.
It is. It's
And
very internal.
I have been like within 50 feet of the summit on difficult mountains that took multiple days, and I turned back because of weather or because I was off route, and you have to have that discipline.
Yeah, it's the willingness to live to bitch about it,
Right,
as opposed to someone crying about you.
And here's the funny thing: when I go climbing with my buddies, I always it's so hard, and you're so exhausted, and you haven't slept, and everything hurts, and you hate it, and then as soon as you get down, you say, "Where are we going next?"
Yeah,
Right?
it's kind of like, you know, I'm friendly with Frank Shorter.
Oh, the
living
runner,
in
the
Boulder.
famous.
Oh yeah, Frank's
the
a
Olympic
nice guy.
runner. Yeah.
Don't see him much, but the best thought is focus on what you're doing right now, not your next race.
Yeah.
But once you get done with that race, as much as you might have hated it, at some point, you can't wait to train for the next one. And climbing is very similar. You know, the approach in might be terrible, but once you've got your crampons on and you're swinging your ice tools and you've got a running belay, you're just in it.
Did you see the movie of the guy who climbed El Cap free solo?
I did.
Did you breathe at all in that movie? That was the most compelling movie.
I thought it was a great film. It was very well produced. It was very well directed.
Right on the edge of life and death, that entire climb. I mean,
Yeah.
Unbelievable. All right, so here's what we're going to do. And by the way, Andrew is like going to tell us about his massive mountain project.
That's right.
Which is like, he's the environmentalist extraordinaire. So, but we're going to take a short break to recognize the underwriters who generously support us here at GrassRoots Television: Bishop Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning, Andrew Sandler, and Bootsy Bellows. I want to give a quick shout out to Maria Cerno, who's the world's champion neuro-ophthalmologist. She can figure anything out. You just like tell her a few problems and she'll know the answer. And I also want to thank Margaret Houghton in North Carolina, who just did a fabulous painting of a mountain scene with this beautiful horse in it. And Margaret, your talent is like amazing. So we're going to take a short break. When we come back, we're going to hear Andrew's entire story, the Gay Jewish Bodyguard. We're coming right back.
Bishop Plumbing and Air Conditioning, serving Aspen and Vail for over 40 years. Shoe covers, name tags, IDs. Let Bishop worry about your heating, plumbing, and air conditioning issues so that you don't have to. Bishop Plumbing and Air Conditioning, 925-8610.
Jerry Bovino, we're back with Andrew Gilman, the Gay Jewish Bodyguard. We're going to cover all those things
All of it.
in sequence. but neither one of those, Jewish doesn't go with bodyguard.
No, not at
Neither
all.
does stereotypically gay. But let's start out with your martial arts training. When did you start to train in martial arts?
My mother got me involved in martial arts in the 80s at 7 years old. So I think it was about 1987, 1988. So I was very young. I started training in Shotokan Karate-do.
Shotokan is Japanese
Is
karate.
really the first karate or martial art that came to the United States progressively and dominated through schools.
So are you knowledgeable in Shotokan karate also?
I'm a black belt.
So I've got a friend, a guy I went to college with. His name's Bruce Hodes. You might know him. He's like 7th Dan Shotokan. They usually don't give that to non-Asian guys. And he teaches in Brooklyn. He's AAU Metro Karate. And the guy's my age, but he's been doing it his entire life. And he has his own dojo, does all that stuff. And he's very knowledgeable about it. And he started out, and he jokes he had like the bad sensei, like the bad guy from the Karate Kid.
Oh, God.
Because you're supposed to learn that karate is for defense, right?
Oh, it's defensive, it's offensive, it's really the practitioner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But that's what you learned when you were 7.
When you're 7, you learn to keep your hands to yourself, and it's school-approved martial arts or mom-approved. It's nothing really too intense or useful.
But I remember when we started our kids in karate, they came home and they were kicking each other. We had to stop it.
Some kids take it to a little extremes, and so you got to water it down.
Right.
So
was that a good experience? What would you advise parents now who they have a 7 or 8, 6-year-old kid and he's got a lot of energy? Would you advise them to get training in martial arts for their kid?
I think martial arts is phenomenal. It applies to every aspect of life in its physicality and emotionally.
The key thing is when it's done properly, it's a mental state as much as physical.
It is. You're stressing your body while relaxing it. So it's similar to climbing as well. Martial arts allows you to figure out and learn how your body is connected, how force is delivered and received, and how your body moves through space. Walking is a controlled fall. Running is a continuous, fast set of controlled falls. Every time we put our foot forwards, we almost fall. Just imagine, just like when you stub your toe, you might fall as well. So we started with Sensei Howard Friedman, and nice Jewish guy I think he was from Queens or from Bayside, went to the Maccabi games, did well, and he started at the YMCA, and we'd schlep over there 2-3 times a week and started teaching a bit, and it was fun.
Did it give you confidence? In other words, I have other friends who have studied karate and different disciplines. I know there's a lot of different ones. But did it make you feel more confident in yourself, independent of what did it teach you emotionally?
I think it gave me an identity. It was very little. Every kid wants to be somebody or be something, and I think that's kind of what it did for me at that point. Karate and I went separate ways rather quickly. I moved into Aikido and ninjutsu. And
those are other martial arts disciplines.
Yeah.
And then you did Filipino.
And now I'm pretty much training in the Filipino systems and a system called Kaju Kembo under Tim Mills. And Tim is direct lineage from the Kaj system under Master Powell.
So you became an expert in martial arts. Did you ever get in a fight?
Yes.
I mean, not talking about in the dojo, because that's what you're training.
No, I mean,
to do.
you go out to a bar or something and you grab the wrong drink, and I don't drink. It's just seltzer and cranberry juice.
You don't drink at all, huh?
Not really. My birthday, New Year's.
Well, tell us. I was telling my kids about a fight that I got in when I was 14 years old. And but supposedly psychiatrists say that they ask you, have you ever been in a fight? Because it has some sense of who you are as a child, as an adult, as a teenager. Mm-hmm. Tell us about your fight that you were in.
I got picked on a lot growing up. Bullying wasn't accepted in my school, but not much was done about it. And, you know, you can solve a fight or a bully really quickly. Just hit him back.
Right.
Because, you know,
What
it's
do you do
unfortunately
with
true.
a bully? Punch him in the nose.
We know
right?
nobody's a tough guy when you get hit in the mouth.
Right.
You know, their plan, their confidence, who they think they are, and who they think you are changes in 1/100th of a second.
It's funny because Mike Tyson has this quote that I actually have a picture of it on my phone. It said, "Everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face."
Yeah, it goes out really fast. It goes out really fast. I don't believe in fighting. I believe in protecting myself or protecting someone else.
Right.
The fighting.
Yeah, you don't want to go out and beat someone up.
No,
just 'cause
you're
you
psychotic if you're going out and
Yeah,
looking for a
right.
fight. You know,
Yeah.
those people are already behind bars, and the rest of
And
them
you
are
know
following.
you can win, so it's not even considering the level of expertise you bring.
No, I'm more worried about the after effect.
Right.
Of having to rationalize why somebody is very debilitated now, or you know, very much not functioning. And to be part of that is not something I want to have to explain on any regular basis. I think the best system of martial arts, I call it my mother's martial arts. You have avoidance, distance, and awareness. And you can have one of these three in any order at any time.
Well, explain that further. Avoidance is obvious.
Right.
You want to avoid a fight.
You want to avoid a fight, and you want to profile and judge people. It's completely counter to our culture, but it's what keeps us safe. We know that we're not going to hurt each other right now, right? But you're walking down the street, maybe you're in the city or in the subway, so now you're in a confined space. And you can only get off to change that space once that subway stops. So you see somebody, they look strange, their behavior's a little odd, so you have an awareness of them. They're not approaching you, and you're not approaching them, and you can leave, right? So you're safe. You can change that distance. So you might not be able to maybe you're not aware, which is the first part that's going to get you hurt. But you're going to be able to create distance. But we're going to say you have that awareness. You're not wearing headphones, you're not on your phone.
So
And-
you're sort of consciously watching your environment.
Yeah.
That's what you do as a bodyguard.
You're looking for that strange guy. 88% of violent crimes committed by men.
88%.
Oh yeah, if not more. And that's, I don't know when that figure exactly was from. I think it's in the last 5 to 10 years, but I doubt it's changed that much.
So let's talk a little bit about, so you're trained in martial arts, and now you're a professional bodyguard. I mean,
I do.
people actually pay you to
keep
be a
them safe.
bodyguard, to keep them safe. Tell me how you involve into a career in that.
A lot of homework. You see what the crime reports are in the area, you see which direction they're going, you create a route, you know where they are, you know what motivates somebody for them to be attacked by somebody. Some people were just scared.
Who needs a bodyguard? We talked about this briefly
Not many
last night.
people.
Not many people. But the people that need one know they need one or not?
Typically, they're on the fence if they think they need somebody, but they don't want to change their life. And my job typically is to blend in, to almost not be there, or to be there physically. It really depends on what that person's emotional need is. And a lot of it's homework.
Talk about the emotional part. Like
The
if I'm
emotional part-
afraid of something, so I say, oh, I better get a bodyguard because someone could hurt me, you're already suspicious that you might be a target.
You might be a target because you've had somebody contact you aggressively. You're having people who are approaching you. Maybe you're just standing out too much.
You have clients like that where they get a call from someone saying, I'm going to get you. Or
I'm out to get you. God told me to kill you. Compelled by aliens. Those people
Compelled by aliens.
Compelled by aliens.
Is a bad sign.
You know, we've never met, and we have this intrinsic connection at a much deeper level than we understand, and we have to come together, and I have to hurt you. And there's different levels of motivation.
So then someone would call you. You work by word of mouth. You don't advertise.
I don't advertise at all.
And you work by word of mouth, and someone would call you and tell me what that conversation is like. They're going to say, Andrew, Joe over in Manhattan told me, I'm a little bit worried. Joe told me that you are an expert in keeping people safe. Describe that conversation. What would you tell the client?
Well, why do you feel you need me?
Okay, you want to do a little due diligence.
You got to do a little due diligence. You got to know what you're getting into.
You don't just want some paranoid guy who's like nuts.
And there are those.
Yeah.
If you've got a guy who's, emotionally disturbed, financially well off, they do exist. I think that's called our president right now. And yeah, and he's got a great team.
Well, he's got a whole Secret Service.
He's got a whole Secret Service, and they all think he's deranged, I'm sure.
My friend in New York calls him Deranged Donnie.
Oh yeah, he's nuts. He puts himself out there. He's probably a very difficult person to protect. I wouldn't want to have to be
because he
anybody
wouldn't
on his
listen
detail.
if you told him you shouldn't be walking out in that crowd. He'd just go out in there.
Exactly. And the idea is you want to keep somebody safe in every environment. But the less you have to actively engage to keep somebody and pushing somebody off of the person you're protecting, the better. Because you want to avoid the object hazard.
So
Don't go looking for it.
When someone hires you, then, do you travel with them? First of all, how long is the engagement?
As long as
for
they
an
need.
hour, for a week, a month?
Could be just an event. Just going to an event.
And they're nervous.
They're nervous. Maybe their ex-husband's after them. Maybe they have a client who's angry because they didn't.
Are these prominent people sometimes that everybody would know who they were? Or?
There's some people who you would definitely know who they are, and then there's people who are as boring as I am.
And then when you're definitely not boring.
Maybe I'm not boring,
but if you like, let's say I'm some famous singer. I'm making this up because the famous Bodyguard story was with Kevin Costner and Whitney Houston, and we all watched that movie, which we loved. But let's say it's a famous singer like that. Do you sort of blend in, or do you walk in next to them, or how do you do it?
However it needs. Depending on what the situation is, what the environment is.
But you have to be pretty close. I mean.
Yeah, what you want to have to do is have layers of security, right? So you've got your door access. You've got your rent-a-cop guys. You've got your where are you sitting, like the usher. How many layers of inconvenience?
Do you coordinate sometimes if there are police at an event? Do they know you're working, or is it sort of on the quiet?
We keep things quiet. It really depends on what's going on. If somebody knows that somebody has a detail, depending on who else is in that protection service, police, local law enforcement, private guy
also.
with Yeah.
If you're at a concert, for instance,
exactly.
You're going to have security.
Yeah, you want a lot of access denied, or restricted access, key cards, and things like that to be able to get through those layers.
So they don't get in to start with. And
exactly. I never want to be reacting. I always want to be the one who's deciding when something happens.
Now, how about regular people like us who really couldn't afford a professional bodyguard? What things should we be looking for? Tell our viewers, you're walking into a concert.
You walk into a concert, and it's a warm show. We'll just say it's, you're in the summer, and there's somebody just wearing too much clothing. And they're wearing pants, and they've got a backpack, and they've got a jacket on that doesn't fit. It's a little bigger than it probably needs to be as well.
Yeah.
Well, you're hiding something. You have to be hiding something. And maybe they're wearing colors that we would call low visibility. That kind of, it's not really gray, it's not really white, it's not really green. It's that in-between spectrum. Very, very military. And they just don't fit. There's something about you that doesn't fit.
And you can pick that out of a crowd.
And I do my very best to pick up on that of why this guy doesn't belong.
Should we be looking for that when you walk in? Should we be looking around just as part of our normal, not
I think
to
just
be paranoid,
going into anywhere, just to be aware, to always have that.
Be aware. Did you read that book, Training with a Navy SEAL? It's a terrific book.
No. Who wrote
it? Some very rich billionaire guy who hired a Navy SEAL to train him, and it's very similar. He was aware of all threats at all times.
Well, there's awareness and there's paranoia.
Yeah.
Right. If you're paranoid, there's a lot of other issues. I feel that you need to be able to walk in, evaluate the situation pretty much on the fly, and keep moving, or you're just going to be withering in fear.
What about? There's a lot of talk nowadays with the Second Amendment and people who want to be able to carry a firearm to protect
guns
themselves.
Are horrible.
Tell us about
guns
that. Tell us about that.
Guns
are you better? Are you in more danger with a gun or without one?
With one.
You're more danger with one. Explain it.
If you can't retain it at your hip or wherever your carry point is, if you can't deploy it and still retain it, and then depending on how you carry, if it's condition 1, where the bullet's already in the chamber, or condition 2, which is very big in Israel, we used to move the slide.
Mossad carries without a round in the chamber.
Right.
I know that.
So if you're pulling a weapon without a round in the chamber, I'm not a huge fan of that. I think guns are terrible. As much as I love to shoot, and I like to shoot rifle and pistol, but if I'm drawing a weapon and I'm working with you to protect you, it's already over. It's just a gunfight at this point.
But the premise is that unless you're trained like a law enforcement officer who practices all the time, or an FBI, or somebody who really knows what they're doing, you're going to probably get yourself killed quicker with the gun.
You're going to make noise. You're likely not going to hit anything. And if someone's close and you're not even a good shot, because you can get lucky. With a knife, on the other hand, you can't get that lucky. You're going to get ugly. You're going to bleed. You'll need a surgeon, maybe a few. But the likelihood of somebody hitting a critical point is not high.
Right.
It's much better, to be honest, to carry a pen and a flashlight. You can get them in anywhere, and you're not going to be hurt by them. Even if you lose them. If your 4-year-old finds your flashlight, you're not going to get a call from the police department.
Right.
You can always bring a flashlight to school. You can always bring it to the office. You can always bring it on an aircraft. You can always bring it to a federal building. You can always have one on you. I don't think almost anybody needs to carry a firearm. I don't care what you think you're trained in. If you can't shoot and move, if you can't deploy and retain that weapon and prevent somebody from taking it off your body if you're not holding it.
That's the key thing, because
that weapon, you always have a gunfight. Whether you're buying a chocolate bar, you're going for a beer, you're walking down the street, you're going skiing, and you have a gun on you, it's a gunfight every time.
You don't want a gunfight.
You never want a gunfight.
Right.
You never want a weapon involved.
So basically your premise is if you can avoid having a gun in the first place, you've reduced your chances of getting yourself killed.
The likelihood of having a gun in the home is that you're going to use it against yourself or someone you love. Or your child's going to get to it, even if it's locked up. People do make mistakes.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, because that's not the common wisdom of those people who promote self-protection with firearms.
So military and police practice what they call the Toller drill, or at least they're trained in it. It's about 25, 30 feet. I think it should be 50, but most people aren't that good of a shot to begin with.
Right. With
and
a handgun at
training.
50 feet, it's hard to hit something.
Well, if you can't shoot something at 50 feet, you better be a really good runner.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to promise, if we put a firearm on you with a Simo round on it, and we see how fast I can get to you with an edge weapon,
yeah,
you'll be in surgery.
I know, I'm sure.
And it's very scary because we have too many guns on the street. We have too many guns in homes. We have too many irrational people, and we have too much anxiety, and everybody wants to show who's bigger.
And what would you do about that? You know, you have people like Bloomberg who are totally anti-gun, and then you have some people like even Bernie Sanders is not anti-gun because he's from a rural state. Would you legislate away guns?
I think we need to control where they are. If your gun is on you, there needs to be a way to know it. And since everybody has phones and it has RFID, and we have other ways of tracking electronically, we know the distance between you and that weapon. Mm-hmm. If it's down, it better be accounted for.
Interesting. So let's talk now. You have a boyfriend.
Yes, beautiful partner.
What's his name?
Luke.
Say hello to Luke.
Hello, Luke. Hi, honey.
Hi, Luke. How long? And so, first of all, let's go back and talk about your own sense of discovery. And I've done probably 20 shows over the years with people with different sexualities, lesbians, gays, transgenders, you name it. We've done it here at GrassRoots. Tell me when you realized that there was something about you that was not just your standard, like straight, heterosexual. How old were you?
4th grade. 3rd, 4th grade.
And tell me what you thought. Do you remember what you thought at the time?
I knew I liked looking at this other kid. He was a cute boy. You know, we're just little boys, and some reason I just liked looking at him. Okay. I had no idea why. Had no words for it.
No words. You didn't know you were attracted to him?
I knew there was something about him I liked looking at. Mm-hmm. I think he had cute hair or something. And
then was that at a time like, to be candid, being gay now is cool. I mean, like,
It's-
everybody
it's-
is gay.
It's just a part of me. It's like I have brown hair and now I have a few extra grays.
Right. But years
or I'm
ago,
scruffy
like,
and
when
don't
I
like to
was a
shave as
kid,
much.
people didn't come out and say they were gay.
No,
They
at that
lived-
point it was dangerous.
It was dangerous, and now we have an enlightened society. What could you tell our viewers? What are there misconceptions about gays that they don't know, that we should know, so we can deal with you more intelligently, respectfully? What are there any, like, total stereotypes about gays? Like, in your case, you've broken the stereotype. You're
I'm
a
a little bit
bodyguard
unique.
who's like,
Yeah. So we're people.
right. That's the first
You know,
thing.
just respect me. I was at the Matthew Shepard Foundation benefit dinner, and Judy Shepard, Matthew's mother, you know, she was talking, and the best thing, and the only thing I really remember is that you don't need to accept someone who's gay. That's a lot. That's really emotionally involved. All you have to do is respect them. If you don't like that they're gay, that's okay. Keep your mouth shut, because they don't care that you're straight or you're trans or whatever it might be. And there's not a lot of, you know, the internal drama of who's what and what sexuality. Not that I've ever witnessed. But I wouldn't say there's any stereotypes. I think what really ruined and had a major impact negatively was Will and Grace, because you had this one flamboyant character or you had the not flamboyant character, and if you're not one, you're the other. And it really said
And it's a spectrum. It's
yeah, it's like my boyfriend's very androgynous and absolutely beautiful. I'm so madly in love with Luke. It's
a beautiful thing.
It's amazing.
This is my joke. Ask me why I'm a big proponent of gay marriage. Just ask
why are
me.
you a big proponent?
Because I think you should be allowed to be as miserable as the rest of us.
I agree. Same with adoption. I should be able to ruin a kid's life just as much as my parents.
I wanted to ask you
but
that.
my parents did a pretty good job. My mom's amazing.
Would you like to have children?
I would definitely want children.
Tell me, explain that. What did you and Luke talk about?
We do.
Being able
we
to
do,
adopt?
eventually. He's 10
What
years
would you
and 10
do?
days younger than I am.
How much?
10 years and 10 days.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but what are the current laws that govern adoption by, like, a gay couple? Do you have to be married to adopt?
I don't think so. I haven't really looked into it.
It's interesting.
So it's definitely a little different.
And here's something interesting. I have a friend who had a prominent job here in Aspen, and he was in a heterosexual marriage, and then one day we were his, like, best friend, okay, and he got divorced, and we thought his wife was gay. We didn't know what was going on. And then he came to us one day and he said, "You're my best friends. I want to tell you I'm gay." Well, that time we knew it. You know, he had gone to Denver. He got his hair cut. He looked great. he was like totally, you know, a new person, and he was happy.
Right.
He was happy that he could tell people that he was gay.
I was pretty miserable before I came out.
And how old were you when you came out?
19. So
Why did you wait so long? Were you concerned about your family, or?
I got bullied growing up. I got picked on and bothered, and you know, it was just less shit to deal with. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Less to deal with
Yeah.
through high school, and I already had issues with other kids, and I
But
also
by
had
that
to be ready
time-
with myself.
But by that time, when you were in junior high school, you knew you were gay.
Oh yeah.
And that's a uniform theme. Like, nobody just, like, suddenly gets to be 30 and says, "Oh, I must be gay." They knew they were gay from the time
Oh,
they
no.
were 8 years old.
You know, yeah, my mother wasn't thrilled, but she loves Luke. She just thinks he's the great.
Now, tell
he's
me,
great.
how did you discuss it with your parents? Let's say there's some gay guys who are in junior high. And they know they're gay. They've never told their parents.
There are so many kids now, at even 12 years old, 9 years old, who are coming out.
What would you advise them? Let's say we have a
They're
kid
still your
who's
kid.
like, no, not the parents. We'll talk about
Oh.
the kid first. How would you advise that child to go to his parents? He wants his parents to love him,
Right.
right? What would you say he should say?
There's a few things I would consider. So I did a little volunteering at Boulder County AIDS Project, and this is coming from them, and I agree with it, and it's probably my own twist. You know, think about the words that are used in the house. How are gay people described? because that home that you're in, you want to maintain that home. That's very important. If your family is hyper-religious, if they use mean words to describe gays, I'd keep my mouth shut. It sounds terrible.
Because they're not going to be accepting.
They might not accept you. It might become violent.
And that's how our friend was. He grew up in the Baptist, Texas,
Yeah.
and there was no way they were going to deal with this. In Aspen, it's like nobody cares, but...
No, I mean, it's an intelligent, educated, affluent community.
Right.
If you've got a rural or inner city area where people are less accepting, you're not the status quo, you're not like all the other siblings, well, then you might have a problem.
So
if your parents are
one
open,
thing is maybe not to just burst in and tell them about it if you know that your family might be less accepting.
Exactly. I wouldn't show up and introduce them to your boyfriend at the same time you're telling them you're gay.
Right. That could be.
You might want to do things a little bit in pieces.
Could be that. So how did you do it with your parents?
On the phone with my mom.
On your phone? Tell me the conversation.
My mom thought I was telling her the truck I just bought was a piece of garbage, which it was. First I told her I was bi. And
had you had experience dating girls?
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh. And what was that like?
They all knew I was gay.
How did they know?
Because every time there was a cute guy who walked by,
you'd be looking at him.
I was looking at him and my eyes
right.
would
And you're a
trail
good-looking guy, so...
And they would look back, and then it's like, oh. Or for me, it gave me a lot of anxiety not coming out. Mm-hmm. I'd shop at some store, and the sales guy was really cute, and he was hitting on me, and I would be with my mother, and I'd say, oh, I need to go back. I think I left my wallet.
Now, here's a question. This is once again, I'm asking it because I don't know the answer.
Right.
So if I don't know, other people out there want to know. Do you have like a special gaydar where you can tell other gay guys?
Yeah.
Or you do?
Absolutely.
You can?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It might be because I'm checking them out.
And they may give you some feedback.
Yeah, we have that little bit of interactions like, oh.
Is it like
cute.
a wink and a nod, or?
It's more just like you notice each other. But being someone who's just more aware in general, and I notice people, it's probably something with that too. But I have friends who, if they're attracted to the guy, then of course they have to be gay too. It makes it easier for them.
Do you think there are people who aren't sure if they're gay, or they don't want to be gay, or they try to convince themselves that there's something different and live a life that maybe it's not the one that they were programmed for?
Well, I think people who aren't honest to themselves are going to have the most emotional pathology.
Anxiety.
And depression and suicidal ideation and be self-injurious. And it's horrible. When you get to the point and you just accept yourself for whoever you are, and especially if you're living in a community that tells you it's bad. Luke was told by his 7th grade English teacher, or I think it was that gays are sinners and terrible people and should go to hell. And this is public school.
Wow.
So you could be
Where did Luke grow up?
In Hooker, Oklahoma.
Wow, that's not it's not exactly like a gay capital there.
I wouldn't say it is remotely similar to anywhere else except other very small, backwards, destitute towns.
And did Luke know that when he was growing up?
He knew that when he was a little boy.
Did he knew that he didn't fit?
He knew that, he knew that he was, incredible and talented his whole life. And he used to sing the Folgers coffee song. And I met the Folgers guy, the Folgers coffee singer in Aspen.
Wow.
Yeah. And so Luke would sing that in the mirror, and he knew that he was going to be somebody. He didn't find opera. Luke's an opera singer.
He's an opera singer.
He is. He's a professional opera singer. And a barista at Starbucks. And a drag queen. And
all of the above, right?
Yeah. And
well, here's an interesting story. So I've had a very, very close friend who's a physician also, who was married twice. I was at his wedding, his second marriage to his wife, and a female, and he was the nicest guy. The nicest guy. We used to go to lunch. He'd call me up. We'd go to lunch. we just have fun and talk about everything. And he was brilliant, and he's a nice guy. He lived in Aspen for a long time. Got married at the Jerome, second time. And then from one second to the next, he like disappears, and turns out, and he calls me up and says, I'm gay. Well, okay, it didn't bother me. I liked him whether he was straight or gay. It was irrelevant. But when I saw him a few years later, he had moved to South Beach and fallen in love, and he stopped me on the street and he wanted to talk about everything gay. He wanted to tell me about it because we were close friends, and he wanted me to know about it. And he said, ask me any questions. And I said to him, here's a question. You've been married to a woman twice, and you've been married to a man. I said, can you love a man the same way that you loved a woman? Because he got married to this guy. And he said, Jerry, I love the man more. And I said, why? And he said, because he loves me for who I am.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the most beautiful. He was accepted by his husband as much and more than his wives had. It's an interesting dynamic.
It's very sweet.
Yeah.
You know, it sounds like his generation was a lot different.
Yeah, he's my age, so it's a different perspective.
You just didn't come out in the 60s and the 70s, and even with Stonewall and all that went on, and civil rights marches.
Exactly.
You just kept your mouth shut.
Kept your mouth shut. Now, you met Luke on Grindr.
Of all things, yeah.
Explain Grindr to those who are not expert in the art.
It's a disgusting app for the most part. It really, I think, brings out a very seedy population.
It's the same. It's sort of the same
it's like
as Tinder. It's the hookup app.
Well, so is the line at the post office or the grocery store or the library or
Perfectly
anywhere you go
said.
or
Brilliant.
waiting in line to ski. It's what you want it to make of it. If you're looking for trouble, you'll find it. If you're looking for somebody who's amazing, who you might fall in love with, you'll find that too.
There's a general stereotype, Andrew, in the straight population that gay Tinder hookup guys are more interested in like casual sexual encounters than relationships. Is that accurate? Or
Within the gay population?
Yes.
I think people in general seek pleasure. I don't think it's any one gender or sexual identity.
But you're still enjoying a relationship with Luke
Absolutely.
that has nothing to do with the sexual part. You love him, right?
Oh, I love him to no end.
Yeah.
I take a bullet for him.
That's amazing. Yeah.
And
he knows that.
Oh yeah. He's.
Do you tell him you love him? Do you say
all
I
the
love
time.
you? That's a beautiful thing.
Every morning,
who
the first
could be against that?
thing we say to each other is I love you.
Who could be against anybody loving anybody?
People who are disturbed.
Right.
And
Ignorant,
who probably have an
disturbed,
abuse history.
Uneducated, something.
Right. Who probably also hate themselves.
Have you ever experienced any prejudice, homophobia? Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Maybe somewhat indirectly. Growing up, kids say mean things, and they don't really even know it.
Right.
And one of the kids who would put me down the most turned out to be very gay. Ray was just a total queen.
Like total projection of.
Oh yeah, and he's quite attracted to me for what I eventually heard, and I feel really bad for him.
Yeah, did you ever talk to him about it? Or?
No, he can deal with himself.
Okay, there you go.
He can go talk to the wall. I'm sure it'll be equally as effective.
So you can tell that Andrew's an amazing person, and now we're going to talk about what's really close to his heart is the mountain. The Massive Mountain Project.
Yeah.
Because you're an environmentalist.
Environmentalist, humanitarian.
Okay. Talk a little bit about what got you interested in the environment.
Well, the biggest thing I notice as a climber, especially ice and mountaineering, is that we have less snow. And it might not seem that way, but when you're on a mountain, you can start to tell that you didn't see certain rock outcroppings ever before. That you're climbing and the ice comes later and it leaves sooner and it's not as thick. There's,
Now explain ice climbing, because most people, they think, like you're walking up Mount Rainier, but
no.
In ice climbing, you've got
You've got 2 ice tools.
2 ice tools. You're in
And you have
crampons.
crampons on a hard shell on a
You're
hard boot.
using ice screws to
That's
belay.
right. You know, the first part of ice climbing, the first rule really is don't fall, and so is all rules between 1 and 10. Ice screws are emotional protection. Makes you feel good to put it in.
Because they can pull out.
They potentially can pull out.
Yeah.
The ice could be variable thicknesses. It could be great on the outside and pretty bad on the inside, where you're going to have a hollow screw, and it's not going to have a full core length of ice coming out. So you could have some instability, and that ice can just break. Going back to those first 10 rules, is you have to have confidence. You have to have good ice. You have to be able to read that ice.
Can you lead on an ice climb?
I lead just a bit.
Yeah, the guys who lead are like they're like superheroes.
Yeah, my climbing partner leads, and I'm leading more and more.
And where in Colorado? Telluride has some ice climbs, right?
Down in Ouray.
Ouray,
the
right.
Ouray Ice Park at Box Canyon, and it's just.
Have you been there?
I have. I met some very good people.
And you have world-class ice climbers there.
Oh
right?
yeah, you've got. I very very lucky to be able to share a title or an achievement with Will Gadd, who's the first person in the world who climbed ice for 24 hours, and he did it on Pickavik, which is a vertical ice climb, and he threw up. And I did my 24-hour ice climb at Highlight Canyon on G1 on the left side. We started on the right.
That's in Ouray.
And mine was in Bozeman, Montana, in Highlight.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful, beautiful canyon. We raised money for Highlight Canyon and Foundation, Friends of Highlight. And they provide road plowing services through this beautiful environment so you can get there. And Matthew Shepard Foundation. So Matthew Shepard Foundation made me feel confident to come out and feel safe. So I wanted to do something for them. And Friends of Highlight, I've never been to Highlight until I drove in the first time and fell in love in seconds.
So what would you tell someone who has done some rock climbing, they've been up the pass here, and maybe climbed around Boulder.
Right.
What would you tell them if they say, well, gee, I want to do ice climbing?
Go with a guide. So many know.
There are guides, like people who know what they're doing.
Guiding. I'm going through some certifications eventually for that.
You have to be really fit, right?
It is.
Because you're swinging.
It's more about a wrist snap, kind of like a whip. If you're muscling through it, you're going to fatigue out. They call it the screaming barfies. I've never experienced it.
There are points though where you're actually on your points. You're on your crampons.
You could be on that front
points,
and you might be
you're up
overextended,
here.
or you could be high-low. And you have to be fit.
But it's physically exhausting.
For some, coming out of the elite triathlon world and knowing how to train, I never find ice climbing exhausting. My bigger issues are my fingers. Not the fact that they fatigue, but they get cold.
Yeah.
Other than that,
because you're climbing on ice.
You're climbing on ice.
What's
it's
a
not
Jewish
exactly
guy climbing on ice?
Well, my mother's not exactly finding it very safe and fulfilling.
Your mother told you not to do that.
She did. It's one of those.
Yeah.
Are you safe? You get home okay? Did you eat something?
So, and you've done a lot of triathlons.
I've raced since about 18 years of triathlon.
Like what kind of triathlons?
I did the Olympic distance.
The Olympic distance, 2.4 miles swimming?
The Olympic distance is a 9/10 of a mile swim, 40K bike.
9/10 of a mile. How much on the bike?
About 28 miles.
Uh-huh.
Or 20 or 26.
And how far is the run? A half marathon?
Off the bike for that is a 10K, so 6.2 miles. And then I would race the 70.3 distance or half Ironman, which was a 1.2 mile swim, 56 mile bike, and 13.1 mile run. Most people are tired after just hearing that.
Yeah, I'm ready for a nap.
Yeah, I try a Red Bull. So yeah, I mean, it's life consuming.
I did some of these shorter triathlons, not the big like Hawaii, 112
That's
mile.
the full Ironman World Championship.
But I did some short ones, and I did okay on the bike and the run. But for me, the swim was brutal. It was just like, I'm a good swimmer. I mean, but it's hard.
Having that mass start, you're in a wetsuit, and most people aren't training in their wetsuit, which I really recommend that if you're new to it or you aren't comfortable in something that feels that way, you have to go out and train in it. You have to have mass start practice, or at least emotionally, to visualize that. while wearing your wetsuit maybe, and to go out and swim, because it's the only place really in triathlon where people die. And
In a swim.
Exactly.
They drown.
They drown. There's underlying pathology. There's many aspects of which people aren't aware or they've been warned against, and you're going to have, your heart's going to seize up, and that's the end.
So talk a little bit about the environment, because that's your real love.
My real, yeah.
Climate change is
huge. We are driving bigger trucks. They might have some type of alternative fuel method, but we're still creating a huge carbon footprint. And in Aspen, it's nice. You don't really need to drive anywhere. There's public transport, and it's very easy. But people have massive trucks, and they'll drive around the corner.
Well, even worse, all these celebrities from Hollywood who go to the Davos thing and they fly in their private jet and then they go and lecture on, like walk the walk. You know?
It's very hypocritical. We're big on, now it's a big cause of not using plastic. The entire outdoor industry is made of plastic, from backpacks to skis to ski poles to jackets to helmets.
Well, in Aspen and Boulder, you're living in Boulder now, right? Boulder, we're pretty conscious about the environment, more than most communities.
Yeah.
And we've sort of, we don't allow plastic bags, and you have to pay 10 cents for a paper bag. And so we're more conscious, but the average world is just, this garbage is all going into the oceans.
A lot of it is the Asian nations like India,
China.
And China. They literally are dumping directly into the rivers. And that's how it's getting there. It's not industrialized nations. And on the other side of recycling is recycling enough all this plastic, yet recycling 100% for mountaineering equipment or whatever, or ski gear, is more expensive than others. And you'd think it'd be cheaper. So it's really a catch-22. You want to have a business and you want to make equipment, it's cheaper to use brand new.
Well, that's an interesting thing, because not all recycling is environmentally sound.
No.
And it was a charade that they pulled on the public for a while. Some of it actually, to recycle some stuff, uses more energy and carbon and coal and smoke than if you just started over.
Yeah, we need to develop new materials. And
biodegradable materials.
Biodegradable. And there is a movement right now there's a Primaloft that's biodegradable completely, and that's a synthetic down. And there's also some manufacturers who are using biodegradable jackets. They're not going to start disintegrating as you're wearing them, but once you put them into the earth, it's designed to be able to fade away.
Yeah. It's interesting, because there's a friend of mine in town, David Roth. A lot of you know David. He was running Peaches at one time, and now he took over Little Ollie's, which is now called Bok Choy. We're giving him a plug. He's a great guy. And everything in the restaurant is biodegradable. Like, there's no plastic, no plates. It's all cartons that when you put them in you eat out of a carton and it goes right.
You could bury it or
grow
a tree or something.
In like a few weeks, it's back to being just like earth and
dirt.
Nothing that's going to last in a landfill for like 10,000 years.
Right.
It's like that stuff I ate when I was a kid. I joked my family, we had the 4 food groups: Hostess cupcakes, ring dings, ding dongs, and snowballs.
Oh,
and that stuff in the middle of the snowballs, that white stuff, the snowball had that sort of gelatinous material that you peeled off and you ate with the coconut flakes. It was pink and white, remember? But that stuff in the inside, I mean, that could probably last for 1,000 years and never.
I think it's radioactive. It's more like lead. It doesn't really go anywhere.
No,
it just doesn't biodegrade. There's like styrofoam and lead. It's just.
So who's your ideal political candidate for the environment? Is there someone that you like?
Environmentally, everybody. The entire Democratic Party is environmentally focused.
I think they all are.
They all are. Everyone's saying the same thing. They need to just encourage people to vote for the presidential nominee and not bash each other. We need to come together as a community, not divide, not self-divide. Because
they're going to bash each other because they all want to. What do you think about Buttigieg? Do you think he's got a chance?
I think he does, but I think that people
too young a little, maybe.
I think he's got it. I mean, he's very bright. He is former Army Ranger, Special Forces
And
operator.
he has the military background, which
I think is useless.
Well,
but
I'm
it
not so sure
understands-
because
but
for
you
a
also
lot of
learn-
Americans want to vote for someone who's been in the military.
I don't think it makes any difference, to be honest, but someone who's coming out of a Special Forces unit learns to think as a unit as opposed to think like an individual. I've had the honor and privilege to work with many Special Forces operators and get them fit enough and help them on their journey into the Special Forces. And I think Buttigieg is great. But at the same time, America is not bright enough to not care who someone loves.
Oh, so you think that would be the thing that would hold them back?
And it's disturbing that I feel as a society we care, and it's nothing that makes any difference.
Yeah,
It doesn't make a difference at all.
it's a fascinating study that there are still pockets of
There are
prejudice
deep
about
pockets
everything.
of incredible prejudice, and our
But we overcame that when we
We did.
elected President Obama.
and if I could vote for him again, I would.
But the interesting thing is we overcame that with President Obama. And so if we could elect a black American, why can't we elect a gay American?
I don't know.
You don't know if it's there yet, huh?
I think there's too much hate in our world, and we propagate people with absurd medals, like Rush Limbaugh, who did nothing,
Hate is always comes from ignorance.
and it comes from the top,
And, well, in this case,
right? So hate is learned in the home, and so is love.
yes,
So-
that's a beautiful thing. I think
Right.
I'm going to end on that.
Yeah.
That's hate is learned in the home, and so is
so is
love.
love.
And you're an amazing guy. Luke's
you.
a lucky guy to have you love him.
Thank you.
And Luke, we hope that you take good care of Andrew, and hope you learned something in today's show. And we will see you next week. If you see Andrew walking around town, go say hello.